Good. Others? What about the UK?
Right, you want somebody from the UK?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's been a very interesting lecture, it's been a very interesting presentation, but I think for me, in a sense, you ducked out of some of the central issues very, very early on by saying there are two ways of looking at this. And one is basically saying, leave democracy aside and let's concentrate on fixing the economy and building the state. And the other is about deepening democracy and doing that. And then we've talked about deepening democracy. I suppose as a development practitioner, or at least as an aid practitioner, and having worked in Afghanistan and done some work in Congo and one or two other places, I'm kind of interested by the idea that democracy is increasingly being held up as a universal panacea for all ills and being imposed in ways which are sometimes quite strange and quite bizarre. And what I suppose interests me is it would be to get a better understanding of the other approaches, the other ways of doing it. Is there a time when it becomes more important for one to start concentrating on the development of democratic processes, participatory processes, and so on? It seems to me that if a state is so weak and so poor that it can't actually put resources on the table for people to discuss how to split up, that there really isn't much point in it getting together. And I think you made that point yourself. So I suppose I'm still asking the question about when and under what circumstances is it right to begin to start, as an aid practitioner, recommending that one follows and pursues strategies that will lead towards this kind of deepening of democracy and pursuing these as a deliberate strategy, and when one actually needs to concentrate on the development of and strengthening of institutions and generally trying to get an economy off the ground.
And I think it's a really fair critique by emphasizing that, and you've heard me emphasize in other places it's really working both sides, at least state and citizen working both sides of the equation simultaneously. And I shared in the other class the recent work we've done bringing the people inside the state who are trying to open the door for citizen participation together. We did a big workshop called Champions of Participation a year and a half ago. That also was interesting because it brought people in the UK together with their counterparts from the best champions we could find in 25 other countries. And it's pretty clear that to build that demand side, what some people said, you've also got to work on what the state can deliver, how it can deliver it, the champions inside it. And it's the people who are in that trying to bring the two together who are oftentimes pretty lonely in the political process. Because the civil society doesn't trust them anymore because they're in the state doesn't trust them anymore because they're trying to break the rules and bring in new voices. And when they got together, they had so much to learn and so much to share with each other. And the keynote speaker for that was the head of the Panchayati Raj system and Minister for Panchayati Raj local governments in India, who came and spoke here in the UK and talked about what had to be done to dismantle colonial rules in order to allow this to happen in India, and suggesting that maybe Britain had a little dismantling to do internally to allow participation to emerge. So I think what's really interesting is what's happening in the UK now to try to build new forms of citizen engagement. There's a lot of efforts going on, at least there were before the economic crisis. It's very likely the economic crisis is going to undercut, like you're saying, a number of those. But I think this notion that we can learn from other countries to revitalize democracy in the North is a very important lesson. So over here, one of our DRC publications that Andrea Cornwell did is also from Demos, is this one on democratizing engagement, what the UK can learn from international experience. And if you're interested in that, it sort of takes some of the lessons from our work internationally to apply to debates here in Britain for revitalizing democracy here in Britain. Yeah, good. Okay, thanks. Anybody else want to say anything?
I was just going to add to that again. I think it's an incredibly interesting moment here in the UK and elsewhere in Europe too. There's a rise of mobilization, as we've seen, around what's happening. And so the whole question of activism and learning how to be activists, again, is becoming one of the areas of interest in these participatory spaces. So relearning the skills for activism has become suddenly an issue that is being discussed quite a bit here in the UK. And where do we get them? How do we learn them? I mean, in some places, some of the work I've been involved in, working with refugees and asylum seekers in London, we've been going back to looking at Gustav Boal's work, at looking at participatory theatre. How do we deal with contestation and conflict issues? How do people learn those skills? And I think that's going to be a growing area, certainly here in the UK, certainly in our inner cities. So, interesting moment.
Good, well, thanks very much. If any of you, we're coming to the final period of our citizenship DRC. We'll be winding up over the next year and a half. We have many case studies, like I say, of many countries, and we're very interested, of course, in seeing how that material can be used. So if any of you want to pick some of these themes up for your papers or want access to materials, it's all on the website, but please feel free to contact us if we can help you any more. There's a lot of comparison, a lot of synthesis to be done. And we're also trying now to produce a kind of a qualitative data set of all 250 studies we've done for students to do for their own analysis and their own thesis. And so particularly for PhD students, those of you who go on to do that, we welcome your engagement. So, thanks very much.